Good morning. So the idea is reading a book one day at a time. I mean, not the entire book. Very slowly, a little bit of concepts of the book, and I'm starting season two. I will quickly go into a reading mode. I have set my timer. How to love the wind. Wind extinguishes a candle and energizes fire. Likewise, with randomness, uncertainty, chaos. You want to use them, not hide from them. You want to be the fire and wish for the wind. This summarizes this author's non make attitude to randomness and uncertainty. We just don't want to, we don't just, we don't want to just survive uncertainty, to just about make it. We want to survive uncertainty, and in addition, like a certain class of aggressive Roman Stoics, have the last word. The mission is how to domesticate, even dominate, even conquer the unseen, the opaque, and the inexplicable. How? The anti-fragile. Some things benefit from shocks. They thrive and grow when exposed to volatility, randomness, disorder, and stressors, and love adventure, risk, and uncertainty. Yet, in spite of the ubiquity of the phenomenon, there is no word for the exact opposite of fragile. Let us call it anti-fragile. Antifragility is beyond resilience or robustness. The resilient resists shocks and stays the same. The antifragile gets better. This property is behind everything that has changed with time. Evolution, culture, ideas, revolutions, political systems, technological innovation, cultural and economic success, corporate survival, good recipes, say chicken soup or a steak tartar with a drop of cognac. The rise of cities, cultures, legal systems, equatorial forests, bacterial resistance, even our own existence as a species on this planet. And antifragility determines the boundary between what is living and organic or a complex, say the human body, and what is inert, say a physical object like the stapler on your desk. The antifragile loves randomness and uncertainty, which also means crucially a love of errors, a certain class of errors. Antifragility has a singular property of allowing us to deal with the unknown, to do things without understanding them and do them well. Let me be more aggressive. We are largely better at doing than we are at thinking. Thanks to antifragility, I would rather be dumb and antifragile than extremely smart and fragile anytime. It is easy to see things around us that like a measure of stressors and volatility. Economic systems, your body, your nutrition, diabetes, and many other similar modern ailments seem to be associated with a lack of randomness in feeding and the absence of the stressor of occasional starvation. Your psyche, there are even financial contracts that are anti-fragile. They're explicitly designed to benefit from market volatility. Anti-fragility makes us understand fragility better. Just as we cannot improve health without reducing disease or increase wealth without first decreasing losses, antifragility and fragility are degrees on a spectrum. Non prediction. By grasping the mechanisms of antifragility, we can build a systematic and broad guide to non predictive decision making Under uncertainty in business, politics, medicine, and life in general. Anywhere the unknown preponderates. Any situation in which there is randomness, unpredictability, opacity, or incomplete understanding of things. It is far easier to figure out if something is fragile than to predict the occurrence of an event that may harm it. Fragility can be measured, risk is not measurable. Outside of casinos or the minds of people who call themselves experts. This provides a solution to what I have called the black swan problem, the impossibility of calculating the risks of consequential rare events. Consequential rare events. Okay. Um, and predicting their occurrence. Sensitivity to harm from volatility is tractable more so than forecasting the event that would cause the harm. So we propose to stand our current approaches to prediction, prognostication, and risk management on their heads. In every domain or area of application, we propose rules for moving from the fragile world towards the anti-fragile through reduction of fragility or harnessing anti-fragility. And we can almost always detect anti-fragility and fragility using a simple test of asymmetry. Anything that has more upside than downside from random events or sudden shocks is anti-fragile. The reverse is fragile. Deprivation of anti-fragility. Crucial, Crucially, if anti-fragility is the property of all those natural and complex systems that have survived, depriving this same sense of volatility, randomness, and stressors will harm them. They will weaken, die, or blow up. We have been fragilizing the economy, our health, political life, education, almost everything by suppressing randomness and volatility. Just as spending a month in bed, preferably with an unabridged version of War and Peace, and access to the Sopranos' entire 86 episode, leads to muscle atrophy. Complex systems are weakened, even killed when deprived of stasis. Much of our modern structured world has been harming us with top down policies and contraptions, dubbed Soviet Harvard delusions in the book, which do precisely this, an insult to the anti-fragility of system. This is the tragedy of modernity. As we neurotically overprotective parents, those trying to help are often hurting us the most. If about everything top down fragilizes and blocks anti fragility and growth, everything bottom up thrives under the right amount of stress and disorder. The process of discovery or innovation or technological progress itself depends on anti-fragile tinkering, aggressive risk bearing rather than formal education, upside at the expense of others. Which brings us to the largest fragilizer of society and greatest generator of crisis, absence of skin in the game. Some become anti-fragile at the expense of others by getting upside or gains from volatility, variations, and disorder, and exposing others to the downside risks of losses or harm. And thus, anti-fragility at the cost of fragility of others is hidden. Given the blindness to anti-fragility by the Soviet Harvard intellectual circles, this asymmetry is rarely identified and so far never taught. Further, as we discovered during the financial crisis that started in 2008, these blow up risks to others are easily concealed owing to the growing complexity of modern institutions and political affairs. While in the past, people of rank or status were only those who took risks and who had the downside for their actions, and heroes were those who did so for the sake of others. Today, the exact reverse is taking place. We are witnessing the rise of a new class of inverse heroes, that is, bureaucrats, bankers, Davos attending members of IAND, International Association of NAM droppers. So, my timer has ended. I am actually reading a very special book, and it kind of a meta book that gives a concrete idea. The idea's name is Antifragile. That means um, anti-fragile means someone or something that gains from something negative happening to them. That means um, there's upside and downside of every events in every systems, and the author is trying to come up with the idea that we should not avoid risk taking. Rather, we should play with risks and try to garner more upside than downside from the risks. So, as I understand it, anti-fragility is a concept that kind of makes us understand more fragility. That means in what ways I can break. So if I am about to break, how I can recultivate myself from there, um, from the rock bottom or whatever down stage you are, with more strength. um, I can explain it with a very practical example. I knew someone who had actually suffered from a stroke, and he had a paralyzed arm. And how it happens with paralyzing um, organs of a human being. So after some time, I mean, obviously, after quite a few years, he had grown more strength in his arms. So that's the very same thing is happening with the idea of anti-fragile. Whenever exposed to shocks, volatility, or any kind of stressors, you are trying to cultivating a better you going through that process, and that's what I am, as a human being, trying to understand this concept more deeply and implement it in our, I would say, in my day-to-day life. The concept of anti-fragility, and anti-fragility actually in the broad term is the very same, like he talks about in the past and present, and like um, some people in the society getting upside from other people's, I mean, risk taking. But the idea is not to read the book from that perspective. It's not about finding flaws about in society or other systems. It's about how I, as an individual, can implement or can uh, dig deeper the concept of anti-fragility. So I will try to stick with 10 minutes of reading and 5 minutes of explanation. In some cases, it might increase. So hopefully, I will get back tomorrow about 6 a.m. and looking forward to read with you guys.